Well, now, for more perspectives on President Buhari's bag of promises, we have Mr. Adewale Adeoye. He's the CEO, journalist for Democratic Rights, also public affairs analyst. We'd like to welcome you to the program.
Yeah, thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. And also in Abuja, Indi Kato joins us there. Happy New Year to you. Thank you for joining us today. All right, Indi Kato, we're perhaps going to come back to you, but looking at the question I just asked Indi Kato while we hope to get her audio working shortly. Were you happy with some of the things that the president addressed in his message, New Year message to Nigerians?
Well, it's a magic moment when Christians all over the world celebrate entrance into New Year. So a speech from the president coming at this time could be seen as a presidential New Year resolution. But based on our own presidents, we need to look beyond the speech and look at what the president is going to do based on his actions. We have had Vision 220, we had Vision 2010. Each year, our leaders come to speak to us, to inspire hope, and to give us a new list. But what is most important is what the president is going to do based on his actions. There are very important issues that he raised, which one can divide into three broad areas. He spoke about politics in terms of 2023, that he's not going to contest elections, he's not going to seek further electoral positions. Well, that should be expected. But for him to be even saying that shows that that controversy has a life of its own, that the controversy is there. We are talking about 2023, just 3 years ahead. Then he also spoke about the second Niger bridge, which I think gives us a lot of hope, and then the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, and then the Kano-Kaduna Highway. Then he spoke about, the need to fight terrorism and many other important areas. But I think these are rituals, that we have from presidents all the time. What is important is that over the years, Nigerians have been used to failed hope. They have been used to dash hope. So nobody is putting his hope on what the president says alone. But what is important is what the president does.
But perhaps that's also where we can, bring in another question. Why indeed have people, those promises been broken? What has really been the impending problem that the president hasn't been able to articulate all of this, the promises for Nigerians?
Well, because increasingly we begin to have leaders that are not actually there to represent the interest of Nigerians. What is most important to them is power for the sake of power, and in terms of transforming our lives, nothing basically has been done. And that is why when you look at every standard, every indices, in terms of the GDP, in terms of the quality of life, in terms of life expectancy, Nigeria is, moving backward almost every time. Even in terms of corruption, we are still rated high. And when you are coming to our airports, that's, you have the first impression that it's a very corrupt country, right from the airport. So we are really not making progress in terms of compare in the context of our potentials.
All right, let's go to Indi Kato in Abuja. Hoping you can hear me now. Tell us, quoting the president, is it a time of hope, optimism, fresh possibilities for you?
Like I said earlier that, my generation, we're a bit different from, it's a whole generational gap, and we're all wondering who is going to pay for the rising debt profile and everything that we're seeing going on right now. I don't think, it's for me, outside right before entering, I was like, different years, same situation. It's not exactly that. But I would also like us to get into, the particular point so that we can dissect. But I don't think that I am hopeful, or many in my generation are hopeful.
So let's look at what our guest in Lagos talked about. He said the president highlighted no third term in office, and he also said strengthening the electoral process, both in Nigeria and across the region. We earlier had the ANN chairman who said that the president should immediately assent to the Electoral Amendment Bill to prove his commitment to democracy and governance. But the president did mention, his strong points, saying strengthening the electoral process. So is that in doubt as to the federal government's plans towards elections or electoral process, and in this case, the amendment bill?
Well, he had the opportunity under the 8th assembly to do that. That was not done. Last year, we saw all that had gone down with the 2 elections that held. That's apart from the main elections in March. We saw what went down, and I don't think that was encouraging either in Kogi State and Bayelsa State. What we have said, a lot of people in civil society, this year is the year to push for electoral amendments. So whether, they're just paying lip service or not, we're going to push for that and ensure with everything we have that is a bill that is rectified. That is a bill that is passed. This needs to be passed. Many people can run for office. Many young people cannot. People who have the system right now, no, heavily dependent on money and corruption, and it just feeds into a bad system, no. We need the electoral bill signed. We need it signed. We also need it amended for a lot of things that affect women, younger people. There's a lot of room for improvement there. It's good that he mentioned it, but he has mentioned this several times, and it's just lip service. So I'm not encouraged that he mentioned it. But yeah, that it's not off the table is a good thing.
Let's look at the relationship between the legislature and executive. And Mr. Adoye, I'd like you to weigh in on that. I mean, the 9th Assembly came in a few months in 2019, but some people have said there's a rubber stamp relationship between the executive and the legislature. Do you see that happening? And when you look at some examples, 37 billion naira National Assembly complex renovations, hate speech bill, social media bill.
Well, I think a National Assembly doesn't need to be recalcitrant to prove that it's it's in the interest of the people. He also doesn't need to work with the executive to also prove that it stands for the interest of the people. I think what is most important to Nigerians is that what is the common agenda between the National Assembly and the presidency that reflects a common commitment to uplifting the lives of Nigerians. So when you are looking at the kind of amount they want to use to renovate the National Assembly, I think it's appalling, it's disturbing, that given the dwindling economic fortunes of the country, that we are going to spend about 37 billion, to renovate, I'm sure that amount is even much more than what was used to build that assembly. So whether it's a rubber stamp or not, what is important is that what does the National Assembly stand for? For now, I don't think we are convinced that this National Assembly is making a kind of creating a paradigm shift from what we had in the past in terms of addressing the fundamental issues that face Nigerians, especially in the context of state police, decentralization of power, and other important principles, carnage principles of democracy. Detaining people without taking them to court beyond normal. The National Assembly is quite silent. The case of Shuore, and many other people like that.
They did say they were going to investigate and look closer into those matters.
Yeah, that's what we usually hear from them, just political statements. But there was no practical action from them to show that they were interested in, defending the rule of law.
Indicator, your thoughts, the relationship between the executive and legislature, are you happy with it? And what do you see happening in 2020?
Of course not. Of course not. And then with what Mr. Adoye said, like, they are in Abuja. Many of these issues happen right here. With Showere's case, we had a court being usurped, the judge had to run and all of that, and you're telling us that you want to investigate. Those are simple political statements. We also have members of the House of Reps, young members who come on social media to complain about, I don't support the 37 billion naira allocation for the renovation of the National Assembly, but it's not to us. There's a reason you have been elected to sit in that position. So it's not to come and complain like the rest of us who are not in there with a mandate to do something. You have to fix some of these things. The social media bill, I like the fact that the president brought back the conversation. In his address, he stated that the conversation around social media should be mature and be more engaging. So you can't just come and, put it down on citizens and insist that we take it like that. And an example that we should look at, because this is very important to me and people in civic space, is that we can see that entering 2020, even these organizations have moved towards proper self-censorship. We've seen the steps that Jack Dorsey and Twitter are taking towards regulation to ensure that, people don't do things for clout, fake news, all of that, ensuring that people have their pictures on their profiles. If you're tweeting things that are just, not organic and meant to trend and destroy certain things, you will be taken out. So that is where the conversation should head. And I like that the organizations are leading the way. And the government should pay attention and also join on that level, not looking to imprison people and all of that.
All
so
right.
the rule of law seriously lacking in in terms of obeying that, we have a major problem there. Jones Abiri, Daddy Atta, the DSS is denying that they are with Daddy Atta. It's taking so long for them to deny
Indicator,
this.
we'll come back. We need to go on a break now. I do apologize. We'll return, still talking more on the promises of the new year. Please join us again. More on the promises from the president. We've been speaking to our guests in Abuja, Indicator, and also Mr. Adewale Adeoye, both public affairs analysts, and getting your closing comments on this issue, and that's the president's message. What do you think? I'll begin with you, Mr. Adeoye, in terms of the federal government, state governments. What are some of the priorities that they can't afford to ignore as we enter into a new decade? Some people have mentioned perhaps restructuring. Ogahanes Indibo has said that that is the way forward. What for you is? I
think the major issue is restructuring, which is directly linked to security and livelihood. So I don't know where we got our own brand of federalism. You know, you can't have a federal country that, you know, has a unitary security architecture. So we need to restructure the country. That is the only legacy I think any government can leave behind for Nigerians to be proud of. You can't have a DPO from Ekiti State to be the DPO in Sokoto State. There's no way we understand the geography, the psychology, the sociology of the land. So we are saying that if we are adopting federalism as a practice in the US, we need to adopt all the elements. So I think restructuring in the country will go a long way to free chained energies, cage souls, so that the country will be able to, the people will be able to realize their potentials. So I think one major area, and we expect the states to push for this demand. The federal government on its own will not just restructure if there is no prayer coming from members of the National Assembly, coming from members of coming from the Senate. Actually, there was a bill, I think last year. The current Speaker of the House of Reps was the one that initiated that before state police. But when it came there, nothing has been done. So let us restructure the country, especially in terms of the security, so that each state will be able to control the police and some other elements that are linked to the livelihood of the people. I think that's a very major issue that we cannot continue to sweep over the market. All
right, Indicator, what for you are those priorities?
I mean, beyond the police issue, he also pointed out we need competitive growth. There are many states that are not pushing their weight, and because of that, even the policies you see on those state levels are not working for us. So restructuring is key. Also for policies with respect to the closure of the land border, I've seen so much romanticizing of that. There are good and bad sides, but I don't think that such a deep policy should be should be done without considering how it affects the citizens. Many people who claim they are supplying this rice and all of that have said that they do not have enough to meet demand. So the government should go back to the table. The economic team should go back to the table and look at how they will fix that. Again, back to electoral reforms and issues with violence around elections. Security is a major issue. You saw the clip with the woman saying that we cannot travel to several places. I can't go to my hometown for Christmas. Many people, and I did not see, I barely saw a mention, I don't think I even saw that, of the North Central and the crisis in there. There's that illusion that the crisis in the North Central is done. It's not done. People are still being faced with insecurity. The government should come to the table with that. The ministry that deals and the organization that deals with refugee crisis and all of that within Nigeria needs to face these areas, because we feel like places there are silenced when it comes to national conversation. Education is key, especially for northern states. We need to push this to the front line. The budget for education is not enough. And lastly, we need to look again into the budget. There are a lot of frivolities inside there. 500 million for, I think, 6 billboards in random places around the country. People need to examine these things closely. The budget should not just be allowed to go like that. I think this is it for me.
All right, we'd like to thank you, Indicator, Public Affairs Analyst, and also thank you, Mr. Adewale Adeoye, for joining us on the program.